Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome back to another video. And for today's video, man, we're trying to see who is going to get the number one seed in the AFC and in the NFC. But before we get into that, if you guys are new here and you do enjoy the content, be sure to drop a like and to subscribe. Now we're at 1,140 subscribers. So since I've uploaded my last video, we've pretty much gained another 100 subscribers. So if you're new here, thank you so much for all the support. I do really appreciate it. I know content creators like to just say that just because it's a line they have to say, but I truly mean that. The support it's kind of overwhelming, and even though I'm not a big channel, I still appreciate every single one of you guys. So yeah, without getting too much into it, let's jump right into today's video, looking at who's going to get the number one seed in the AFC and NFC, and kind of looking at the remainder of the schedules to see how possible it is for some of these teams to realistically get that seed. So we're going to start off with the AFC. Now, in the AFC, these are the current standings. We have Baltimore at the 1, Miami at the 2, Kansas City at the 3, and Jacksonville at the 4, with Cleveland at the 5. But I'm only going to be going through 4 remaining schedules here. It's going to be Baltimore, Miami, Kansas City, and Cleveland. I think those are the best chances for any one of these teams to get the number one seed. Baltimore, currently sitting at the 1 seed, they're 11-3. The 3 games they have left, they have to play at San Fran. Then they have to play 2 home games to finish out the season. They play Miami, and then they play the Steelers. So my prediction is Baltimore loses that game at San Fran, but then they beat the Dolphins, and then they beat the Steelers to finish the season 13-4. And I think this is the team that is most realistically going to get the number one seed. But that's Baltimore's remaining schedule. At the very least, they finish 2-1 and finish at 13-4. But that Dolphins game, that Ravens-Dolphins game, is really going to dictate a lot for the AFC and the 1 seed, because if Miami ends up winning that and then Kansas City ends up winning out, Kansas City has a tiebreaker over Miami, and then Kansas City would have the same record as the Ravens. So that Week 17 game, Dolphins Ravens, means a ton for the number 1 seed. But anyways, moving on now to the Miami Dolphins, currently the 2 seed, sitting at 10-4, the only 10-win team in the AFC. Their last 3 games are versus the Cowboys at home. They go play Baltimore, like I just mentioned, in Maryland. Then they play the Bills at home. Now, my prediction is that the Dolphins lose to the Cowboys, lose to the Ravens, and then beat the Bills to clinch the AFC East title at the end of the season. But anything could happen. And if the Dolphins do win out, right? If they do win out, then they would finish 13-4. And that, like I said, that tiebreaker against the Ravens would go crazy. But if the Chiefs win out, they would be 12-5, not 13-4. So it would shake things up. But just to put it into perspective, that Ravens-Dolphins game really has a lot riding on it. Now we have Kansas City, currently sitting at 9-5. Their remainder of the schedule versus the Raiders, versus the Bengals, then at the Chargers. I think they win out easily, finish the season 12-5. But like I mentioned, I'm going to say it again, that Dolphins-Ravens matchup could shake things up for them. But I think it's kind of out of their reach. Even if they do win out, you're still going to have a 13-win team in the Dolphins and the Ravens, unless the Ravens falter another game and the Dolphins do lose out. But with the Ravens being 2 games up on the Chiefs currently, I don't think it's likely that the Chiefs do get the 1 seed. Now, another one that I kind of just want to look at a little bit is the Cleveland Browns. They've been rolling with Joe Flacco. They play the Texans, then they play the Jets, then they play the Bengals. I think they win out. I really do. Their defense has been playing phenomenal. Their offense has been finding their rhythm. Joe Flacco is back to being an elite game manager, in my opinion. He always was that. Has never been anything better. The most touchdowns he threw in a single season was 26 touchdowns and like 20 interceptions. So he's not the greatest, but I think he's an elite game manager, to say the least. But that's the Cleveland Browns remaining schedule. But my prediction is I think Baltimore gets the number 1 seed just because they control their own destiny. And even if they do lose to the Niners and just beat the Dolphins and the Steelers, they'll get the 1 seed. But that Steelers matchup for Week 18, it's a divisional matchup, and it could go either way. But with the question marks at quarterback for the Steelers, I think the Ravens easily win that one. Not easily, but I think the Ravens I almost said it again. I think the Ravens win that one. So now looking on to the NFC, man, we had some very interesting games. with the Cowboys and the Eagles, and then the Lions blowing out the Broncos. But let's take a look at the standings here. We have San Fran at 1, Dallas at 2, Detroit at 3, Tampa Bay at 4, and now the Eagles at 10 and 4 at the 5 seed, because now they're not divisional leaders, so they're going to be playing in the wild card. So let's start off with San Francisco, the obvious choice to win the number 1 seed here. Currently sitting at 11 and 3, and I think they win out. Like I mentioned earlier, they play the Ravens at home, so I think they win that to go to 12 and 3. Then they play in Washington, D.C. against the Commanders. I think they steamroll the Commanders. Then they play at home versus the Rams. It's going to be a divisional matchup, but I think they win that one as well. If they already have the number 1 seed locked up, then I could see them resting some starters, playing only half the game. But it really depends on how the other teams in the NFC finish out the rest of the regular season. Now moving on to the Dallas Cowboys. They had a really good game against the Eagles, and then they got blown out by the Bills, but they're currently 10 and 4. They're winning the NFC East. They are the number 2 seed in the NFC, and they have clinched a playoff spot. Their remaining schedule is as follows: at the Dolphins at Hard Rock, versus the Lions, and at the Commanders. I think the Cowboys went out and finished 13 and 4. Now, if San Fran does somehow drop a game, then they could have a play for that number 1 seed. But I think the most competitive game the Cowboys have remaining is against the Dolphins. Now, I am a Dolphins fan, but I think the Cowboys come into Miami and beat them. But I would love to see the Dolphins win this game. It would definitely propel the Dolphins in the right direction for the number 1 seed. But now we're talking about the NFC, so I'm not going to talk about the Dolphins anymore. But that game against the Dolphins is going to be the tone setter for the Cowboys in the race for this number 1 seed, or even the number 2 seed in their case here, if San Fran does win out. I could see a tough matchup against the Lions, but the Lions have been so inconsistent this season. The Cowboys have as well, but the Lions have been extremely inconsistent, losing to the Bears, losing to the Packers on Thanksgiving, but then blowing out the Broncos. So it's just kind of flip a coin there. Now, moving on to Philadelphia. Now, I was supposed to record this video last week, but I could not find the time to. And for the Eagles' remainder of the schedule, I had predicted that they would lose against Seattle. I had here, Philly has lost their last 7 matchups against Seattle, dating back to 2011. And they haven't looked good as of late, and they ended up losing that one. So I ended up getting that one right. But the Eagles currently sitting at 10 and 4. They have the Giants, the Cardinals, and the Giants. I think they easily win those. They get some really good bounce back games. Hopefully they look good offensively. Jalen Hurts can get going in the passing game. So I think they went out and they finished 13 and 4. Now, is it enough to hope that San Fran loses one of their remaining 3 games to get the 1 seed? I don't think so, but you got to throw everything in there into perspective. Now, the last one, I don't think it really matters, but I wanted to talk about it. The Lions, they're currently sitting at 10 and 4, and the remainder of their schedule is at the Vikings, at the Cowboys, and versus the Vikings. So very similar to the Eagles in the sense that they play 2 divisional games in 3 weeks, or the same divisional opponent in 3 weeks. I think the Lions beat the Vikings, lose to the Cowboys, and then beat the Vikings again. It's not enough to propel them into the number 1 seed, but it's still something to let the Lions finish 12 and 5. And, if a couple of games do drop and falter, they could be looking at the number 3 seed, maybe even the number 2 seed. So, yeah, my prediction for the NFC is the San Francisco 49ers to get that number 1 seed. I'm sure just like most people, they think San Fran is going to get the number 1 seed. Looking at how easy their schedule is aside from Baltimore, I think it's wraps. Unless Dallas does win out and San Fran does lose that game against Baltimore, but San Fran has a tiebreaker against Dallas because they played early in the year and they routed them. But yeah, so my prediction is for the AFC, the Baltimore Ravens get that number 1 seed, and for the NFC, the San Francisco 49ers get that 1 seed. So I'm excited to see the remainder of these games pan out, especially that Week 17 matchup I've been raving about, the Baltimore Ravens and the Miami Dolphins. That's really, really going to shake things up for the standings in the AFC if the Dolphins can win. So I'm looking forward to that one. And then you have San Francisco playing the Baltimore Ravens this coming week. So that could shake things up as well. But I hope it's a great matchup. I hope it's a good game to watch. I can get my pizza rolls, kick back, relax, and just watch the game. But that's gonna do it for today's video. Hopefully you all did enjoy, and let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Who you think is gonna get the number one seed? Any surprises? Any schedule matchups you guys are looking forward to? But yeah, that's gonna do it. Hopefully you all enjoyed, and as always, I will see you all next video.